Hey everyone, welcome to the Folk Filmmaking Podcast. This is episode 1. We have just launched this podcast, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll know that we have a new channel about folk filmmaking. I'm here with my co-host, Elizabeth, my wife.
Hello, everyone.
Well, you might know her from films such as Watch Me As I Go, maybe even small cameos in The Long Con and Chlorine.
And for the OGs, Pull the Trigger.
That
I'd had a voiceover in Pull the Trigger.
That is super OG. If you know that, you know what we're talking about.
That's a deep cut.
Yeah, I feel like only a very small amount of our audience knows what that is. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. So with this folk filmmaking podcast, I think the goal is for us to just talk about folk filmmaking from the perspective of two people who are connected to it, and probably bring on people to interview them about their films, maybe just talk about the movement in general. Do you have any thoughts on that, Elizabeth?
I think that pretty much sums it up. This has been a long time in the making. This is something we have wanted to do for a very long time.
Yeah, this has been something that I feel like we've talked about for a while, and it just, now we have the correct gear, at least for now. We'll maybe get some podcast mics one of these days. But it's a lot of fun to be on here and talk. So what I'm thinking about doing is talking about Watch Me As I Go, at least to start, because I think that that's where everyone knows you from. What was it like, I guess, being involved in that project just from the beginning of it? Not necessarily like when we filmed it, but like, was it?
First and foremost, I did not want to do that at all. I do not like watching myself back. I do not like listening to myself back. I will not listen to this podcast back. The experience was fun. The drive on that trip was insane, especially the drive back. But the process of filming was easy. I think that comes from you. You make things easy. Your direction is
Chill?
Yeah, very chill.
Yeah, I think that it was, I'll be honest, when we rolled into it, I wasn't sure because we had never truly acted in anything other than, I would say the scene in Sheep Theater is like the only scene that you like truly were in the process of, like, we were filming, there was like, it was an important emotional scene and we had to nail like certain bits. And I don't know if you remember that was a lot more tense, if I remember. Did that feel that way to you when we were filming that scene?
I liked that scene better as a whole than the entire film of Watch Me As I Go. And I'm probably going to get a lot of shit from you for that. But
Oh, no, I think I get what you mean by that. In terms of like, I feel like that scene is more traditionally cinematic, and I feel like maybe plays to what you enjoy about films more than...
So I say that I would never watch anything that I've done back, but I have reluctantly watched Watch Me As I Go, but I mute myself.
Yeah.
There's a few things that I would change about Watch Me As I Go. I definitely, for me, this is just a personal preference. I would not wear my glasses in any scenes. My glasses, I would take them off. They make my eyes look weird. Looking through
your glasses, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very
odd.
similar about that with my glasses, so I feel like...
I wish somebody would have told... That's something I wish somebody would have said, hey, don't do that. But hindsight's 2020. Did you like that joke, Dan?
That is a pretty good joke.
But there's a few things with the plot as well of Watch Me As I Go that I would change. Dan's probably just realizing this for the first time now, but there's a few things that I would have changed.
I feel like, for me, personally, I think there was a decent amount of things I would have changed, too, if, like, I had more...
The scene where we're in silhouette and we're facing the other building at the window.
Yeah.
And we're on the phone with Joel's character.
Yeah.
Me, personally, I'm more of an outspoken person, and I feel like that would have gone completely different.
If I
played it the way I wanted to play it, but...
Yeah. I think that it works because I think that, and a lot of people have picked up on this, and I think I want to say it was intentional, is like my character's kind of a loudmouth in the film, and like.
Well, you're a loudmouth in general.
Yeah, I am, but like I feel like I play him annoyingly so in the movie, where it's to the point where like he just keeps getting in words edgewise, and you're just quiet because you're just like, this guy just won't shut the fuck up. And there's that really great scene, and I think it's your best line in the film, where you say like silence wouldn't be a bad thing, and then the music just starts swelling, and then we just cut out the dialogue track. I think that there's something cathartic about my character being like the one who talks the majority of it, and then towards the end of the film, it's kind of like becomes this more like a silent movie where like almost no dialogue is really exchanged in the last few scenes. It's all through voicemails and visuals that we're getting like the final bits of the story. So I think that in some ways, your character, for me at least, was quiet for that intentional like subversion at the end of the film, where basically you are the main driver of like everything that happens at the end of the film. And
That's true.
Like that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And I feel like your character's the more mysterious one. Like we don't really know your character too much because like you're very quiet, and you have like the stuff like the divorce scene where you're like I don't want to tell you about it. And then we never really go into it further. I feel like in a regular like rom-com, that would have been like a huge, like a bit. You know what I mean?
Yes, I get what you're saying. The history there would have driven the story forward.
Yeah, it would have been like more. That's the main plot, if that makes any bit of sense.
So the big question is there a sequel to Watch Me As I Go?
Yeah, I think that we can talk about it here. I think that there's a really good chance that there's going to be a sequel, assuming that we A, go back to Myrtle Beach, which I think we are, and then B, if you are willing, and then C, if there's a story. Like, so like...
I don't know if you can afford my writer.
You heard it here, folks. I need to raise money on Kickstarter. We're going to start at 10 grand. No, but I think... Yeah, I feel like there's more story with those two characters, and I think it would be even more interesting, kind of like the Before trilogy, where like they meet up, they have this whirlwind romance, and then they meet up again. What's funny is like I don't feel like they have a whirlwind romance in Watch Me As I Go. I feel like they have like an okay experience with each other, and I think it'd be interesting to follow it up and maybe reveal more of the cracks that weren't in the original film. So like
my character's standoffish in this whole entire film. It should be flipped, I feel like, in the second film. It should be like you're standoffish.
I feel like my character, and I think that maybe this would play into that, would be, I think it would be kind of interesting if like one of the two of the characters like was still with someone while they were on the trip, and we find out that like they were kind of lying. I feel like that would be like a way to like kind of develop some pressure points that would make the characters have like a ton of dialogue that would be interesting.
Like your character's in a relationship?
Yeah, and you like find me on Facebook like by like you're like snooping, and then basically...
Can we hire somebody to pose with pictures and post them on your Facebook page and then really confuse the hell out of your family?
That would be funny.
That actually would be really funny.
That's exactly what I was thinking though, in terms of like, yeah, like getting like someone to pose with like fake photos, and then you look at them as a character and you're like, oh my gosh, like, wait, so was everything like a lie? And then I feel like that could expose a sort of different element to the story that wouldn't necessarily have been there in the first film, because I feel like we literally see my character joke about like being married in the first film, and obviously I don't think my character would have been married, but like I think it would be interesting to see if like perhaps maybe he was in a relationship and he was lying to her, and then it kind of like exposes a different...
What if we tie everything together with Chlorine? What if this guy is really the pool boy in Chlorine, and I'm the character in the bed in Las Vegas? Because you do wear your wedding ring. There's a little Easter egg for everyone. You do wear your wedding ring through the entire film of Chlorine.
Yes, I actually think, and this will be my theory, I actually feel like Watch Me As I Go has more close ties to cheap theater. Because,
Really?
like, think about it. Cheap theater
I
is a.
don't see that at all.
So, I have a wife in cheap theater who's obviously died. And my character in both films is very talkative. In cheap theater and in Watch Me As I Go. Cheap theater, I'm talking obviously to Plus Sheep. But, like, I feel like the relationship of, like, the wife character is so much more crucial to cheap theater. So I feel like if this was like building out the backstory to cheap theater, like I could imagine like, oh, this is the real relationship that they had. Whereas Pool Boy is such a different character than like the Watch Me As I Go character. I don't know if I could envision them as being the same character. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. Fair enough. Fair enough.
But I think that like both fan theories are fun. Like I like that like people have come up with stuff like that. I've heard people say stuff in that.
Is that what I said? Is that a previous thought by someone?
There's been a few people.
Oh, well, I feel bad now.
No, I think that it's a cool fan theory to like be like, oh, like perhaps all these are connected. I feel like most of the films, the only one that really feels like it exists on an island is kind of like Long Con. It just doesn't feel like it's connected to any of my other stuff. But like I feel like Sheep Theater, Chlorine, and Watch Me As I Go have like this kind of trilogy of connections and little things that you could probably tie in together. And then obviously you have Pure Cinema, which is your favorite of my films.
If you were given the ability to reshoot any of your films that you've put out, besides Pure Cinema, nobody likes that.
You just gave the haters fuel.
Okay, so if you were given the ability to reshoot any of your films with, say, a multi-million-dollar budget, would you do it? And what things would you change?
I would probably reshoot if I had like a multi-million-dollar budget, like, and I was like going to actually reshoot something and it was gonna be like a big movie. I mean, I feel like I don't feel like you would do Sheep Theater or Chlorine, so it'd probably have to be Long Con, and I feel like that seems like the generic answer because it is my biggest movie in terms of how much I've spent on it, but like that movie I feel like could have been like, and I've always compared it to, and this might sound stupid, but like it's a movie about something. Like whereas like Get Out by like Jordan Peele is like about something, this is a film about something, and I feel like that's something that I think Hollywood would be willing to endorse in some level, even if the film is a major critique on Hollywood itself. It's done slyly enough that I feel like most people wouldn't catch on to the fact that it's that. So I feel like that would be the movie that I would most likely want to do, and I feel like would most likely have the best chance of like being successful for me personally.
Interesting.
If you had to pick one of my films to do with a big budget, is there any ones that like you feel like would stand out if they had like a bigger budget?
Well, actually, going back to Pull the Trigger, which wasn't a feature-length film, I would totally want to see something with Pull the Trigger. A full-length movie. I'd like to explore the characters more. I would really, ideally, like to work with Austin Mason again.
Hogan
Mason.
That's his new.
That's his Los Angeles name.
Yeah, because he is the SAG. You have to have you know that in SAG no one can have the exact same name, so two people can't share a name. That's why a lot of people get fake names.
That's why Michael B. Jordan and Michael Jordan, because I'm sure Michael Jordan SAG because of Space Jam.
Yeah, so you have to have a different name because no two people can share the same name on the Screen Actors Guild.
How did you get your SAG card? I was in the movie Space Jam.
No.
That is an episode for another day. All of the reboots, remakes, and sequels that are and live action remakes that are unnecessary. That's a controversial topic. We have to put that down for something to
Yeah, I think that would be interesting to see what our opinions on which of the sequels are unnecessary and which ones have been necessary. Because I feel like I'm not like 100% against every sequel reboot. I think there's some good ones in the mix, but you know, I think on a general rule, we both basically agree that like a lot of them are kind of pointless. So
We'll put that on the list. That sounds like a good episode 3. If you guys have any other talking points, drop a comment down below and let us know things that you would like to hear from our new podcast.
Yeah, basically, the more questions you guys can reach out to us and be like, hey, this is what we want. This will help guide this show a little bit. In terms of other things I wanted to go over, I think one thing I want to talk about is plans for 2022 in terms of the channel, in terms of just filmmaking stuff in general, maybe another folk filmmaking meetup. I didn't know if you had any sort of thoughts on that.
I really want to work on my Holly's Happy Hounds script for my pseudo Lifetime movie. I want to be more involved with your channel.
Would that be a folk film? Like, would you like, or is the intention not to make that a folk film? Like, is the intention to make that like a thing you actually sell Lifetime, or is it like, do you care if it goes?
I mean, that's a pipe dream. You know what I really want to do is I want to find that guy that sold his script that worked at the Christmas tree farm in Naperville, and figure out how he sold his script. I want to know like his connections. That's terrible, but it's also like an interesting story. I wish we could interview him.
Yeah, I imagine that there is some connections like in terms of like these Lifetime movies. I did know a guy who worked on a bunch of Lifetime movies.
Isn't it funny, like you like films that are like cinematic masterpieces, and while I do delve into those things, I'm more like the guilty pleasure, mainstream, contemporary garbage films. Like some of them are garbage, don't get me wrong. Some of them are like classics. But we meet in the middle at certain places and overlap where I expose you to new things and you expose me to new things. I think that's why our relationship works and why.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that for me, I think that there is something to be said about enjoying things that are just not always like, you know, Stalker from 1971, a classic film, you know, like you see all that stuff all the time. So I think that sometimes it's good to like put on a Lifetime Christmas movie and just, I think we were having a discussion a few days ago about it and saying like, sometimes it's good to just see the process of like how anyone would tackle, you know, screenwriting. So like you're looking at it from the perspective of like, you know, this isn't a perfect movie, but I'm gonna still look at the beats. How do they execute these beats, and why is this effective, and why do people connect with this? So for me, I like when you expose me to more of the pop culture side of stuff, whereas I'm more probably into, like you said, the more obscure auteurism type stuff. And I think that that's always a good thing to have. I think that if you get too far on one side or the other side, you're either super duper pretentious or you don't know enough about like cinemas in general. So I feel like that's how we balance each other out a lot.
For those of you that have never been to our house, we have about 1,000, we have like 5 bookshelves full of DVDs. But why is Back to the Future the one that I've like worn out? I think that's like says something. Like I love the comfort of those kind of films. Like, and there's something about you can put it on and walk away, and then in 10 minutes when you come back, you know exactly where you are in that film. Like,
yeah, I think that there's something to be said about comfort movies. Like
that's probably like one of the things that you have changed about me, that I don't always go for the comfortable now.
Yeah, I think that that's a good thing. I think that.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think that for me, I grew up very similar in the sense that like, this is a really funny story. My brother, for some reason, his comfort movie, and this is gonna sound so fucked up, his comfort movie was Saving Private Ryan. So literally every morning, because we were homeschooled, so before we would go to school, every morning he would watch Saving Private Ryan before we would start school. And if you know Saving Private Ryan, like people's guts are being spilled out of this. Like them.
Kind of dark and like depressing.
It's a depressing. I mean, again, it's a very heroic and patriotic. Like at the end, you definitely feel good. It's a feel-good movie at the end. But like, there's a lot of really dark subject matter. So when you say you watch that a lot, I mean, I think my brother maybe had watched that film maybe like 50 to 100 times. Like he'd watch it every day, and that's how obsessed he was. So when you say like comfort movies, I get what you mean, because I kind of grew up in a way where we would watch the same stuff. Like I'd watch Star Wars and just put it on repeat. But I think that there's sometimes that you want to have that comfort, and I think like for Christmas movies, or like even Christmas music. I know we've been playing a lot of Christmas music. I feel like there's something to be enjoyed about having a comfort thing that you just know, like, hey, this is consistent and I enjoy this. And then there's points where you want to have that experimentation, and I think like for me, that's usually right before I make a new movie, I guess.
What do you mean? Explain that.
Like, right before I'm gonna make a new film, I usually like to like watch new things, just like jolt a new idea.
Oh, to be inspired.
Yeah, so like when I made, let's say, any of my films, okay, good example, Chlorine. There's like certain films that I watched before making Chlorine that like kind of inspired me to get into the mindset of that. And I feel like sometimes that's all you need, is to watch a couple good movies before you kind of like jolt into this. Oh yeah, that's what it's about. You know, like this is what the movie's gonna be. And sometimes you don't see it until you've, watched a couple good movies. So
that's interesting. I thought you used music because you usually make playlists before you shoot. So I thought it was mostly music that influenced that. That's interesting. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, music is definitely a big part of the creation, but that's more like on the scene-to-scene bit. So like, I'll listen to a song and then I'll be like, oh wow, that's like an interesting song. That might be good for this scene where he shoots this guy. And then I like will envision the scene, and I will like play like a little mini movie in my head. So like for Chlorine 2 or Chlorine Kills.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Chlorine Kills, like I already have the songs in my head, and I already have the editing done in my head. Like I already know exactly how I'm gonna shoot it. I know exactly the emotion of the scene. I know exactly what the characters are gonna look like. I know where they're gonna be framed. The only stuff I need to figure out is the location, and then just record the scene. So I already know exactly how I want it.
That's interesting. I do that. Okay, like this isn't the same thing, but before I go to sleep at night, I tell myself a story, and I've never described it that way, but it is like a little movie before I go to sleep.
Yeah, that's basically what I do for every project. And
do you think a lot of people do that, or do you think that's like something for just me and you, kind of like the right brain?
I think that a lot of people, there's a lot of directors that are like that, but I feel like it just depends. Like for me, and this might sound uber pretentious, so, hound me in the comments when I say this, but I've always felt like it was like a skill that I had, where like, I can see scenes before they happen. Like, I can see how I'm gonna edit them, and I know exactly in the moment, like, this is what's gonna happen, then this is gonna happen, then I'm gonna cut here, 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 and here. And I don't think most people, like, I think a lot of people can't do that. Like, I think a lot of people just see a scene and they're like, well, we'll figure it out in editing. But for me, that's never been a problem. Like, I've always been able to be like, yep, here's the scene, I know exactly what we're going to do, and we're gonna edit it this way, and I know exactly how it's gonna be executed. So much so that, like I said, literally months before, I'm already kind of locked in as to what's gonna happen. So I think that that's not entirely special to just us, but I feel like I don't think everyone has that ability to sort of see scenes ahead of time only in their head. I think that's why a lot of people get like writer's block, because like they can't envision that sort of stuff, so it's harder to put it on paper. I mean, but I've dealt with writer's block too. I mean, that's why I haven't really written anything for a while. Do you feel like you have writer? I know you're kind of getting to the beginning of your first script. with Holly's Happy Hounds. Do you feel like this blocked to start, or do you feel?
No, I feel more like I don't know which way I want to take the structure of it.
Okay. So is that more?
Because I have the base template of what I want to happen in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know where I want to put like the conflict, or I don't know what the conflict is yet.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure because I have multiple ideas for that.
So for you, for stories, does it come like characters first or stories first? Like, does like the
Characters.
So like you envision a girl, and then you envision her working at her dad's dog grooming business,
Well,
and then it just keeps going and going and going from there.
yeah, definitely. There's this other story that I always, like, this is one of those things that I tell myself before I go to sleep. Like, it's so cheesy, but I think it's kind of cute too. But like, it's always like, I don't know why this is so terrible. Maybe it's just because I have like a romantic heart, but I always tell myself like romance stories before I go to sleep.
Yeah.
But
That
there's
makes sense.
one, like, there's a couple that are like, have been in my head for years.
And you've been just like wanting to tell them through narratives, like actual movies, or
I
just,
think so, yes.
that's cool. I think that I know like sometimes you've told me like little bits and pieces of little things, and I think that's cool that you have those ideas. And like I think that with anything, stories that start just off of like an interest to tell them in your own head, just to yourself, are usually how they get translated to bigger audiences. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's say Sheep Theater. Like, Sheep Theater was just a story that like me and you kind of like did for each other just because it was funny. And then we're like, well, what if it's like a serious, actual, real movie? And then
I still think that there should be a Sheep Theater YouTube channel, and we should make shorts. I think that would be so adorable.
that would be like, I do think that the Thanksgiving sheep one would have been adorable. I think that the hard thing about the sheep is just, and I think like no one really realized, they're just really time consuming. Like every project I do with the sheep is just hard, like 10 times harder than a regular movie, because I'm like pushing myself to the limit in terms of like practical effects that I can do by myself without, anyone's help other than me and possibly Joel. So it's kind of hard, but I would love to do, if I could like figure out a way to like streamline that and do like some short films, that would be really fun. I think that would be interesting.
I think there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of stories to tell with
Honestly, I think that like
those characters.
if it was up to me, I feel like the sheep would work really good on TikTok. Like I feel like TikTok would be like just the perfect medium for like,
Okay, that's adorable.
you know what I mean? Like if I edited them in like Premiere, did all the effects, and then output it for TikTok. Like I know people would love that shit because like it's just clever enough that like the average person can't do it. And I feel like the TikTok audience would be much more enamored by it than, let's say, YouTube, where like there's a lot of really high quality stuff on YouTube. And not to say there isn't stuff on TikTok, but like TikTok is still kind of developing its fashion or its style of like what it enjoys. And I feel like, whereas YouTube, you can literally go and find like full professional horror films or comedies or dramas. So there's a lot of stuff that's already out there that you can like enjoy that's probably more professional than like Sheep Theater. Whereas like I feel like the sheep would work really good on TikTok because like most people probably haven't seen those level of effects on a platform like TikTok, if that makes any bit of sense. And you would keep everything really short to like 30 seconds.
Right.
So you're not like spending hours working on a TikTok short, but like you could have a scene where like 4 sheep are like being puppeted and they're like running around, and then like, one of them jumps, and I think that would just.
There's a lot of really popular, I guess, I don't know, what do you call them? Skits? I don't know. Stories being told on TikTok that are serialized And people eat that stuff up. I think it's a brilliant idea.
I really want to do, like, my ultimate dream with TikTok is to do my TikTok feature film. I'm still developing that idea, which is basically, it's going to be a concurrent narrative over 90 stories. And I guess the way you've expressed it to me, that on TikTok you can have them like lead into the next one, I guess. Mm-hmm. Which I didn't know, which actually makes it even easier, in my opinion.
Well, everyone always says part 1, part 2, part 3.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to do. Like,
I think that the biggest thing is with this series that would be maybe harder is like maintaining that mystery that it's like real, but also like scary. So like, did you ever see Marble Hornets?
no clue. What is that?
So Marble Hornets was this like YouTube show, I want to say like 2006, 2007. And these guys were genius. They basically made a like, what's the Blair Witch Project, but for YouTube. But what was smart about it is that the first like 30 episodes were just like random footage of like random paranormal stuff. And there was like no characters. It was just like, hey, we found this footage, you know, check it out. And then they slowly developed these characters into the show as if they were real people. But because they had so many episodes that were just very diegetic and didn't really have anything going on, it kind of developed into this really interesting project where it was like, is this real? Because like people couldn't really discern, you know, obviously in 2006, people were a lot more convinced by, you know, fake media stuff.
Right.
So I don't know. Marble Hornets has always been a big inspiration for like what I want to do with this.
The early 2000s.
Yeah, I feel like
What a time to be alive.
The early 2000s, especially for like YouTube stuff, there was like a golden era from like 2000, I want to say 2006, 2007 to like 2011 or 12. I feel like Coney 2012 was like the death of like classic YouTube. But like there were so many great things. But I don't want to like drag this episode too long. I know we're trying to keep these to like 30, 35 minutes. So do you have any final thoughts just on any of the topics we talked about, or?
No, I'm excited to see where this goes. Yeah. I'm a little sleepy, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm a little sleepy too, but I think that this was a lot of fun. This was a good episode. I feel like we covered more ground than I was expecting, honestly. I think that Watch Me As I Go, I thought was going to be like the only thing we talked about, but I like that we kind of bounced around different ideas.
You know, first episode energy.
Yeah.
I also think that we should figure out who we're going to interview first.
Yeah, I feel like if it's going to be anyone, it's going to probably
Mystery guest.
Dun, dun, dun. It's probably
Episode 2.
It's probably going to be like one of the folk filmmakers, whether it be online or in person. So hopefully we'll get someone soon and we'll figure it out. I mean, what's cool about this is you can just record these on and then just put them together later. Like you don't.
Shh, don't let the genie out of the bottle. Don't let everyone know.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, thank you guys for joining us on our very first episode of the Folk Filmmaking Podcast. Leave us a comment. Let us know if the audio sounds like shit. Tell us if we sound like shit.
Like, follow, subscribe for more.
Like, follow, and subscribe. We appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get into some more juicy folk filmmaking details on the next episode. Perhaps we'll get another guest. So.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
We didn't fight. It's a win.
We didn't fight. It's a win.